Hi, my name is Erica Thorson. This is Creative Programming to Lure High School Students to the Library. I'm using Screencast-O-Matic. I'm doing the free program that they have, which only allows for 15 minutes of recording time, so I'll be speaking fast and I won't be reading everything on my slides. I'll also post this as a PowerPoint so you can look through it on your own and follow any of the links if you'd like. Also, any pictures that I have in my presentation that don't have attribution come from Pixabay. I joined Pixabay, and if you join, you get access to thousands of copyright-free images with no attribution required. The first thing that everyone sees is the physical space, and so the first thing you can do to make sure your space is inviting is make it something that's really comfortable for students, where they feel safe and they feel it's theirs. So a few things you can do to help with that is, of course, having soft seating areas, big comfy chairs and couches, and anything to make it feel more like a coffee shop or a bookstore that will really invite them in. One article even talked about having booths and bistro tables so that students feel like they're going out to, again, a coffee shop or a restaurant, and that's a great place for board games or group projects, things like that. Several articles talked about how important it is, if you can do this, to put anything that you have on wheels. So the shelving, the furniture, excuse me, so that you can move things around and have even a movable stage so that you can host poetry slams, small concerts, and basically turn the space into anything that it needs to be for student and community interest. This was more just a joke. I came across this picture, which I thought was really funny. I know none of us are going to have fencing in our library, so things have changed. It's definitely a lot more inviting than it used to be, or at least that particular one. More into the physical space, of course, being mindful of our signage so that it's really welcoming, and instead of telling students all the things they can't do, it's telling them what they can do. As libraries move to become more of a learning commons and active spaces, it's important to remember that there are still students who just want a quiet place to read and study. Sometimes it's really helpful to have a barrier between a person and all that outside noise. So if you are able to do it, if you have a space that allows it, a glassed-in quiet area for those students to read or study is really nice. A place for relaxation and de-stressing is also a great idea. Students are feeling a lot of pressure and anxiety, so if the library can be a place where they feel comfortable coming to do activities anywhere from meditation to knitting, then that's also going to be serving some of our students. As far as equipment, there's all sorts of things that a makerspace is going to have, of course, and there's probably separate presentations on that. So there's all the high-tech stuff. Some of the articles I read also talked about low-tech stuff. So they mentioned sewing machines are always really popular, even with boys, since a lot fewer homes have sewing machines than in the past, and people still want to make things or repair things. One librarian talked about how an old typewriter was the biggest source of fascination. Students kind of bypassed all the gadgets and tech and just wanted to play with this typewriter because it was so novel to them. She also talked about how important variety is. So whatever it is that you have, maker spaces, different labs like a media broadcasting station or art media lab or innovation lab, rotating things through. And it might just be taking things and putting them in the back for a little while and then bringing them out later on, so that there's the sense of variety and novelty. Programs are always great, lunch programs to bring students in. So having getting student feedback on what they would like to see and having programs around that. So sometimes it can be organizing speakers to come in to talk to students about issues and do question and answer sessions on topics that interest them. It can be anything from like nursing students here answering health questions to advice on how to get a job to mental health issues to how to take care of pets, just anything that students want to hear about. Readers Advisory is always a great way to get students involved. Having weekly lunch programs, so maybe each day there's a different activity. One library talked about, they have their very alliterative Mario Kart Monday and Tinker Tuesday. You could also just do a board game day, game show day, trivia day. You can also have programs in the evening, and I thought this one was really cute, the Anti-Valentine's Day Scary Movie Night. That was one idea there. There's probably already a lot of clubs in your school, and so one idea to get students into the library is invite those clubs in. Or if there are clubs that students have been talking about wanting to have, be the person that runs them or have them hosted in the library. Some themes, events, and promotions. When authors visit, if the author is willing, you could also turn those into workshops so that students are not just listening to an author and asking questions about the author's books, but learning from that author and being able to hone their own craft. The article that I got this from, this librarian really did a lot of creative outreach, and so she had themed dress-up days and then would decorate a section of the library to go along with that dress-up day. And she didn't say this, but I would assume also promoted books that were along that theme as well. So Read Like a Rock Star and A Carnival of Reading and The Reading Ranch, A Trip to Paradise. Or well, those are two different ones, The Reading Ranch and A Trip to Paradise. They had pictures of that one. So there was tiki huts and lounge chairs and all sorts of things that made students want to come in and see what was going on. She also had read shirts made up that she gave to staff and students and would have them wear once a month. And I was thinking you could even combine it with a contest. So they wear their shirt and then they're entered into a raffle to win some sort of prize. The same librarian also published and displayed anthologies of student work, so they're not just going in and seeing books by strangers, but books by themselves or their peers. Book to movie parties, we can really capitalize on all of the young adult books that are being made into movies right now by taking that enthusiasm and having a party when the movie's released. So the article I read talked about themed games and themed food and having costume contests, just a lot of fun with that. Murder mystery parties or dinners. If you're interested in looking at my resources and clicking on this article, it was really interesting. She describes all these different physical and problem solving competitions based on books, and she specifically talked about the Hunger Games, minus the murder, of course, but different activities to get students involved. Another librarian talked about taking some of your carts and decorating them with displays like you would in the library, but then bringing them out into other places in the school. So it's like little pop-up libraries, inviting students to browse the books somewhere else other than in the library, and then also hopefully getting them to want to come down and check out the full library as well. Tech demo nights are a great way to have students take some of the technology they might be learning through a makerspace or a station, whatever you might call it, an idea station or innovation station, and then teaching adults, so having a night where adults can come in and learn some of that tech and the students get to be in a leadership and teacher role. This article that I read talked about how passive programming is also really important. A lot of teens are introverted and they might not want to engage with some of that more active, involved programming. So some ideas were questions that you could have around the library for students to answer. They called them butcher paper questions, but of course you could also use whiteboards. Students could write with dry erase markers or put sticky notes on there. And the questions could be book related or just life related. What's your favorite class? What's your dream job? Things about pop culture. Scavenger hunts, little different art stations like origami stations or blackout poetry. This is an example of blackout poetry here. Trivia posters where they lift the flap, vote on different things. One idea would be which book should be made into a movie next. Some real life project ideas, and I really like the real life projects because the concern I have with makerspaces is that we're creating a lot of garbage and kind of encouraging kids to make things that they might just throw away soon. But these real life projects get students involved in their community and has them thinking about what they can do for others instead of just making their own stuff. And so I love the idea of using a 3D printer and Tinkercad to make missing limbs for pets, for example. You could get a group involved with service projects already going on. One high school got so into learning about human trafficking that the library hosted a human trafficking conference. And then later they also did a collaboration with groups to help women in Ethiopia. You could have a cafe in your library if that's a space that you can convert, or if you have a space you can convert, and even partner with a culinary program or a life skills program to have students work in the cafe. For management, it's always a great idea to have students take management roles whenever they can, like caring for the equipment in a makerspace and learning how to use it and teaching others. Some enticements. I love the idea of, obviously you can't do it every day, but sometimes popping up some popcorn and having that smell draw people in, and maybe there's an activity going along with that. I also had some ideas as I was reading through articles, so like Bookstagram challenges. If you haven't looked up Bookstagram yet, there's all sorts of fun pictures people have taken with book covers. They bring in props and things. I don't really have the time to talk about all of these, but one I will talk about is having clubs come in to make a book display. So, for example, at our school, we have a culinary club, we have Metcha, we have a QSA club. So inviting them in to come browse the shelves and find books that relate to their club and having them actually make a display highlighting those books and maybe making little cards with reader recommendations for the books they've read, and even researching other books that the library currently doesn't own and making recommendations to the library for purchase. So helping clubs get involved and feeling like they have a say in the library, and it's a great way to have them browse the shelves too. We have a fashion club. I was thinking a book-inspired fashion show would be really fun. Lots of kids are interested in survival skills, so a lunch or after-school program, bring in some experts to teach survival skills, or they could teach each other. A lot of my students talk about getting a job, so a place to do mock interviews, maybe where they could even videotape themselves and watch it later to see how their interview went. I know our district right now has a focus on social-emotional learning, and so I was thinking, in addition to some of the questions that you have that are just fun on that passive programming idea with like they can write in answers, they could also be ones that are deeper, like what does kindness look like? Or if you could teach everyone in the world one thing, what would it be? Get students thinking about some deeper issues. I also really want to be able to make my library, when I get one, when I'm lucky enough to have one, look like a bookstore. So I don't know what kind of budget and space I'll have, but any forward-facing displays and tables where people can browse through books, just trying to get books off the shelf and into more displays, as many as possible, which I know a lot of people are already doing anyway. I have a Pinterest I want to show you, but first, here are some of my references. You're welcome to come back and look at these later on your own. Oh, whoops. And I'll just go to the Pinterest page. So I also found so many ideas that weren't necessarily in my academic research articles, but just pictures. A picture, of course, says 1,000 words, and there's all these really wonderful ideas on here. If you'd like to look at my Instagram page, or no doubt many of you have already been collecting your own ideas, just some really fun ones, mini golf and library Jenga, book to movie, which cover is better? Book flicks. I just love all the ideas in here. Escape room would be so fun to do. So many wonderful ideas on Instagram. And I hope that you have found some inspiring ideas through this presentation. Thank you so much for listening. And I am done. Goodbye.